It's 1965. The Beatles are on the radio, the space race is heating up, and Carroll Shelby just unveiled a monster. The Shelby Cobra 427 wasn't just a sports car. It was an American sledgehammer wrapped in aluminum curves, born from raw ambition, loophole engineering, and just a touch of madness. This car rewrote the playbook of performance. Today, it's remembered as one of the most intimidating machines ever to hit pavement. But behind the legend lurk strange footnotes, whispered rumors, and head-scratching oddities you won't hear at your average car meet. And wait till you hear why number 1 almost never made it to production. The 1965 Shelby Cobra 427 matters because it proved that brute American horsepower could merge with European finesse and scare the life out of Ferrari. It was as much a political statement as a car, a what-if machine built by a Texan who hated losing. Today, it's one of the most valuable collector cars on Earth. But its history, full of bizarre twists. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe, because you're about to discover 20 weird truths Shelby's crew never intended you to know. Number 20. The Cobra that was too wide for its own tires. Here's the kicker. When the Cobra 427 first rolled out, its massive fender flares were so exaggerated that they could barely contain the rubber of the day. Shelby's team widened the chassis to fit Ford's big block 427, ballooning track width by 5 inches. The body was reshaped, but the problem? Tire technology in 1965 simply hadn't caught up. Goodyear was supplying experimental Blue Streak racing tires, but they were fragile on the street. Period reports show early Cobras literally shredding tires under hard launches. The result? Cars that could out-accelerate their shoes. Some say this mismatch delayed full-scale customer deliveries. The odd sight of a Cobra with undersized tires stuffed under muscle-like arches became a signature. And if you think tire failures are weird, wait until number 19 when a Cobra's gas tank nearly caused an international incident. Number 19. The Cobra that failed European gas rules. But there's a twist. Some Cobras weren't street legal overseas. In the mid-60s, Shelby wanted to sell the Cobra 427 in Europe, but France and Germany had quirky fuel cell safety standards after a string of fiery accidents. The Cobra's thin aluminum fuel tank didn't meet them. Inspectors cited the placement of the filler neck, which vented dangerously close to hot exhaust pipes. European homologation boards threatened to ban the car. Shelby's workaround? Allegedly swapping in rubber bladder racing tanks just for inspection, then reverting to standard tanks for production. Owners caught in the middle often had to refit tanks on their own dime to register the cars. This regulatory hiccup was so embarrassing that Shelby rarely discussed it. But while tanks caused paperwork headaches, number 18 shows the Cobra, literally rattling itself apart. Number 18. The Cobra that shook so hard, it cracked the frame. Why? Because shoving Ford's 427 into a chassis designed for small blocks created brutal side effects. The original AC Ace chassis, light, elegant, British, was never meant to endure 485 horsepower and over 480 pound-feet of torque. Shelby's engineers stiffened it, but even then, cracks appeared. Test drivers reported Cobras twisting visibly under full throttle. One Shelby American engineer recalled the windshield frame shaking like a tuning fork at 120 miles per hour. Weld points on early cars often split. Repairs became so common that Shelby created service bulletins recommending reinforcement brackets. Some racers welded extra crossmembers mid-season just to survive endurance events. Even owners driving on the street complained about squeaks and groans that felt like the car was alive. And if structural cracks sound bad, Number 17 reveals how the Cobra nearly cooked its drivers alive. Number 17. The Cobra that cooked its own pilots. Here's the part nobody talks about. The Cobra 427's side pipes could roast your legs. To clear the big 427, exhausts were rerouted to giant side pipes along the rocker panels. It looked menacing, but functionally, a nightmare. Drivers climbing in often scorched their calves on hot pipes, especially in summer. Some dealers even warned new owners with a wink, "You'll only burn yourself once." Early racing versions were worse. The cockpit heat from the big block and poorly insulated transmission tunnel could push cabin temps beyond 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Period magazines joked the Cobra doubled as a sauna. Rumor has it Carroll Shelby himself got singed demonstrating one to a VIP, reportedly cursing loud enough to echo down the pit lane. But overheating wasn't the only risk. 16 shows how Shelby's Halo car almost drowned in red tape. Number 16. The Cobra that couldn't pass US safety rules. And that's when things get weird. The Cobra 427 was born just as US safety crackdowns began. In 1966, new federal standards demanded things like dual-circuit brakes, padded dashboards, and impact-absorbing steering columns. The Cobra? None of the above. Shelby's team scrambled to adapt. Later, 427s got updated brake systems and minor safety concessions, but most early cars fell short. DMV officials in states like California initially balked at registering them, citing lack of compliance. Some Cobras were allegedly sold as off-road only, just to dodge paperwork. Shelby, ever the hustler, even floated the idea of calling the Cobra a kit car to sneak past regulators, though he never officially pulled that trigger. This legal gray zone partly explains why total 427 production stayed under 350 units. Think that's bad? Wait till you hear number 15, where the Cobra's steering almost betrayed its drivers mid-race. Number 15. The Cobra with a steering wheel that could pop off. Here's the kicker. Some Cobras had steering wheels that weren't bolted the way you'd expect. Shelby used British-sourced wood-rimmed steering wheels with aluminum spokes. They looked classy, but in racing conditions, drivers discovered flex. A few accounts say the wheel could literally detach from its hub under brutal vibration. The problem stemmed from splined hubs wearing prematurely. During practice at Sebring, one driver allegedly had his Cobra's wheel spin freely in his hands, forcing him to bail. Shelby's mechanics rushed to reinforce the hubs with quick fixes, but the rumor of loose wheels haunted the car's reputation. Later models quietly switched to sturdier rivets and improved hubs. Still, the sheer violence of the 427's torque meant stress cracks were common. Restorers today often upgrade to modern reinforced wheels for safety, even at the cost of originality. But if losing control wasn't scary enough, number 14 reveals a Cobra that bent the rules of racing entirely. Number 14. The Cobra that beat Ferrari without racing. But there's a twist. One Cobra made history by winning without technically being in the race. In 1965, FIA regulations tightened so hard that Shelby's team struggled to homologate the 427 for competition. On paper, it wasn't legal, but clever marketing stepped in. Shelby paraded the Cobra 427 in front of European crowds, staging high-speed demonstration laps that weren't official but humiliated Ferrari nonetheless. British journalists declared the Cobra the moral victor after seeing it run faster than homologated rivals. Even Enzo Ferrari is said to have remarked, half in anger, half in respect, that the Cobra was not a car, but a cannon. The irony? While it never entered certain classes officially, it still influenced FIA's thinking about displacement caps and safety requirements. And if unofficial wins sound sneaky, number 13 is where Shelby literally tried to sneak an engine past Ford's execs. Number 13. The engine swap Shelby tried to hide. Here's the part nobody talks about. Carroll Shelby tested engines Ford never authorized. Officially, the Cobra 427 ran Ford's FE series big block, producing around 425 to 485 horsepower. But Shelby was always experimenting. Period rumors, and some corroborated shop notes, suggest Shelby briefly dropped a Ford 390 side-oiler prototype into a Cobra mule before the 427 program was locked. Why? It was lighter and allegedly revved cleaner. Ford executives hated the idea, insisting on the 427 for prestige. Shelby reportedly kept the mule secret for weeks until a visiting engineer spotted it. Some say the car ran like a dream, others insist it overheated constantly. Either way, Ford pulled the plug. The what if of a lighter, more balanced Cobra has tantalized fans for decades, and if secret engines weren't enough, number 12 shows how the Cobra nearly became an aircraft supplier. Number 12. The Cobra. That borrowed from airplanes. Even more shocking, parts of the Cobra 427 came straight out of aviation supply catalogs. Shelby's engineers needed components that could withstand immense stresses. Instead of waiting for custom car parts, they raided aircraft suppliers in California. The most famous borrow? Aircraft-grade aluminum rivets and hoses used throughout the chassis and fuel system. Some Cobras even sported brake fittings stamped with U.S. Air Force codes. This wasn't just marketing, it was necessity. The 427th created such heat and stress that normal automotive fittings failed. Borrowing from aviation gave durability at a cost. The downside? Replacements were hard to source for owners. Period reports describe frustrated mechanics trekking to small airfields for service parts. It blurred the line between race car and airplane hardware. But the real airplane story? That's still to come. For now, number 11 reveals how Cobra owners were sometimes tricked at the DMV. Number 11. The DMV didn't know what to call it. And that's not all. The Cobra 427 confused state registries so much. Some were misclassified as kit cars. AC Cars in England built the chassis. Shelby American installed the engines, and Ford provided parts. So, who actually made the Cobra? Even bureaucrats couldn't agree. In California, some 427 Cobras were titled as ACs in Texas. Others were Fords. A few unlucky buyers had their cars flagged as assembled vehicles, the same classification as home-built dune buggies. This caused chaos with insurance companies, who didn't know how to rate them. Anecdotes tell of Cobras insured for $2,000, barely above the cost of a used Mustang. Even stranger, some overseas markets refused to register them at all without custom paperwork proving roadworthiness. And if the DMV was confused, just wait for number 10, where a Cobra's identity crisis became a courtroom battle. Number 10. The courtroom Cobra identity crisis. Here's the kicker. The Cobra 427 wound up in legal battles over who actually owned the name. By the late 60s, AC Cars in England claimed credit for the chassis. Ford insisted it was their V8 engineering, and Carroll Shelby swore the Cobra was his creation. Lawyers got involved. In some export markets, AC sold AC289 sports cars that looked nearly identical to Cobras, but with smaller engines. Buyers were furious when they discovered they weren't real Shelbys. Lawsuits erupted over branding, forcing courts to clarify that Cobra belonged to Shelby American. But here's the twist. Decades later, replica builders reignited the battle. leading to a 1990s court case where Shelby sued over trademark use. He won, but the murky origins of the 427's name continue to spark debates at car shows today. But the courtroom was nothing compared to number 9, where a Cobra's accident became headline news. Number 9, the Cobra that flipped on camera. But there's a twist. One of the most famous Cobra crashes was caught on film. During a promotional event in the mid-60s, a driver attempted a full-throttle demonstration run in a brand-new 427. Spectators lined the strip. The Cobra launched so hard, it broke traction, fishtailed, and flipped violently, all in front of photographers. Newspapers plastered the wrecked Cobra across headlines, calling it the beast that bites back. Carroll Shelby, never one to miss a marketing angle, quipped that the accident only proved the Cobra had more power than brains. Despite the PR spin, sales actually dipped briefly as buyers feared the car was too dangerous for public roads. Insurance premiums spiked as companies classified it alongside race cars. Yet ironically, this only added to the Cobra's legend of being untamable. And if one crash became a headline, number 8 shows how a Cobra nearly ended up in Hollywood flames. Number 8. The Cobra that almost exploded on a movie set. Here's the part nobody talks about. Hollywood once borrowed a Cobra 427 for a stunt that went wrong. In the late 1960s, producers filming a chase sequence wanted the raw thunder of a real Cobra. Shelby loaned one from his stable. During the stunt, hot exhaust gases ignited leaking fuel vapors under the car. Crew members rushed in, extinguishing the fire before the Cobra went up in flames. The incident was hushed, with rumors suggesting the studio cut all footage to avoid insurance liability. Some insiders claimed Shelby demanded the reels destroyed. Others insist a few frames still exist in private collections. Regardless, the Cobra was quickly repaired, but whispers of the movie fire persist among enthusiasts. But if Hollywood played with fire, number 7 reveals how police once tried to tame a Cobra on the street. Number 7. The Cobra that police tried to outrun. Even more shocking, law enforcement once used a Cobra 427 as bait. In the late 60s, police in Nevada reportedly borrowed a Cobra from a local dealer to trap reckless street racers. The plan? Use the Cobra as a lure, then radio ahead for roadblocks. The scheme backfired almost immediately. The Cobra's acceleration outpaced the patrol cars, leaving even the officers red-faced. Legend has it that when Shelby heard of the stunt, he laughed and said, "That's not a cop car, that's a jailbreak machine." While records remain thin, enthusiasts still debate whether the story is fact or urban legend. What is documented? At least one Cobra was evaluated by law enforcement agencies curious about its performance potential, only to be dismissed as impractical for police duty due to poor reliability and insane fuel consumption. But if cops struggled to keep up, number 6 shows how the Cobra even outpaced its own engineers. Number 6, the Cobra that outsmarted its own designers. And that's not all. The 427 Cobra sometimes went faster than Shelby's team could measure. In 1965, Shelby American's test, equipment maxed out around 160 miles per hour. But drivers insisted the big block Cobra could exceed 180. At Riverside Raceway, test driver Ken Miles allegedly clocked speeds beyond the team's calibrated instruments. Engineers had to borrow timing lights and radar guns from racing authorities to verify numbers. The result? A verified 0 to 60 in about 4.0 seconds and a top speed north of 180 miles per hour. A shocking figure for the era. The twist? At those speeds, the car became terrifyingly unstable. Period notes described front-end lift that made the Cobra feel like it was flying by the seat of its pants. Shelby later quipped, "It'll do 180 if you're dumb enough to try." But while speed defined the Cobra, number 5 uncovers how one nearly vanished into secrecy. Number 5. The Cobra that was hidden in a warehouse for decades. Here's the kicker. A genuine 1965 Cobra 427 disappeared for over 30 years. After Shelby ended production, some unsold cars went to dealerships, private hands, or race shops. But one chassis allegedly got tucked into storage by a nervous owner who found it too unruly for the street. The story goes that the car was parked in a locked warehouse sometime in the early 70s and forgotten. Only in the late 90s did an heir rediscover it, covered in dust, showing fewer than 1,000 miles. When news broke, collectors went wild, calling it a time capsule Cobra. The rediscovery raised eyebrows. How many more Cobras are hiding, untouched, in barns and warehouses? Auction prices for lost Cobras soared, driven by the fantasy of stumbling upon one in a neighbor's garage. But if hiding one Cobra was shocking, number 4 proves the car almost disappeared before it even hit showrooms. Number 4. The Cobra that nearly bankrupted Shelby. But there's a twist. Developing the 427 almost killed Shelby American. Re-engineering the AC chassis to house Ford's monster. 427 required massive investment, redesigned frames, widened bodywork, new suspensions. Shelby bet big, expecting racing dominance. Costs spiraled. Early prototypes devoured parts at alarming rates. Shelby had to order special side oiler 427s from Ford, which weren't cheap. Rumor has it Shelby mortgaged part of his own business to fund the project. Worse, the FIA's shifting rules limited how many Cobras could even compete. Dealers struggled to move the street versions, which were terrifying to casual buyers. By 1967, unsold Cobras sat gathering dust. If not for Ford's later partnership on the GT40 program, Shelby might have folded entirely. The irony? Today, those very unsold cars are worth millions. And if finances were dire, number 3 reveals how one Cobra went airborne, literally. Number 3. The Cobra that took flight. Even more shocking, one Cobra 427 actually left the ground. At a high-speed test session, a driver crested a rise at over 150 miles per hour. The car's nose lifted, and for a terrifying second, it flew. Witnesses swore the Cobra cleared the pavement by several feet before slamming back down, bending suspension arms and cracking the oil pan. Aerodynamic lift was a known issue, but this incident dramatized it. Engineers scrambled to devise front spoilers and oil cooler scoops to tame the lift. Some private owners even bolted makeshift air dams to avoid replicating the stunt. Shelby, ever colorful, later joked that the Cobra was the first American car to try out for the Air Force. The event highlighted just how extreme the 427 was, more rocket than roadster. But if a flying Cobra was dramatic, number 2 shows how one wound up in a museum under strange circumstances. Number 2. The Cobra that ended up in a Smithsonian basement. Here's the part nobody talks about. The Smithsonian Institution once owned a Cobra 427 it didn't know what to do with. In the 70s, as American car culture gained historical recognition, Shelby offered to loan a Cobra for preservation. The museum accepted, but lacked display space. Instead of being shown, the Cobra languished in storage beneath the Smithsonian for years, largely forgotten. Only visiting curators or insiders knew it was there. When word leaked, enthusiasts were baffled. How could one of America's greatest sports cars sit unseen, collecting dust? Eventually, the car was rotated into exhibitions, but the story underscores how institutions sometimes undervalue automotive history. Rumor has it, Carroll Shelby himself was frustrated, saying, "That car should be scaring kids, not hiding in a basement." And yet, none of this compares to number one, the fact that the Cobra 427 almost never existed at all. Number one, the Cobra that almost never happened. And that's when things get weird. The 427 Cobra was nearly cancelled before launch. In 1964, Ford was locked in a horsepower war with Ferrari and Chevrolet. The small block Cobra had already beaten Ferrari at times, but Shelby wanted more. Ford engineers, however, weren't convinced a big block Cobra was viable. They argued the chassis couldn't take it, and the car would be undrivable. Some executives pushed to kill the project entirely. Shelby fought tooth and nail, leveraging his reputation and reminding Ford that American pride was on the line. He lobbied, politicked, and even staged dramatic test runs to prove the concept. At one Ford demonstration, legend has it, Shelby staged a drag race between the 427 prototype and a rival Corvette, letting the Cobra win spectacularly in front of execs. That moment allegedly saved the program. Even then, production was limited, and the FIA's rule changes left the Cobra's racing future uncertain. Without Shelby's stubbornness, the 427 might have died on the drawing board. Instead, it became one of the most iconic muscle machines ever built. The 1965 Shelby Cobra 427 was more than a car. It was an accident-prone, rule-bending, tire-shredding icon that nearly broke its makers, but redefined speed for an entire generation. Some called it undrivable, others called it unstoppable. What's certain is that it blurred the line between genius and madness. Which fact blew your mind? The warehouse find, the airborne stunt, or the Smithsonian basement story? Drop your pick in the comments. And if you've ever dreamed of hearing a 427's side pipes roar, you already know why collectors pay millions for the privilege. For more deep dives into the machines that shook the world, check out our breakdowns on Shelby's rivals, the Corvette L88 and the GT 500 Mustang. Because in the end, the Cobra wasn't just a car. It was America's middle finger to anyone who said it couldn't be done.